Mariupol held for 82 days, Bakhmut for over 200. The streets were rubble, the air thick with fear, yet the cities refused to fall. This is not a modern anomaly. History has written these patterns in blood and stone. From Leningrad to Stalingrad, from Sarajevo to ancient walled cities, sieges follow a brutal, predictable playbook. Defenders dig in, attackers overreach, and human will is tested to its limits. In Ukraine, the same rules apply, but with new weapons, global scrutiny, and lives hanging in the balance. What can history teach us about survival, strategy, and the cost of resistance? Chapter 1. The Siege Formula. Every siege begins the same way, with patience and precision. Armies surround a city, cutting it off from the world, starving it of supplies, isolating it from reinforcements. The walls are no longer mere stone. They are the line between survival and surrender. Sieges are not about sheer firepower alone. They are about control, logistics, and morale. The attacker believes time is on their side, that hunger and fear will break defenders faster than swords ever could. The defenders know the opposite. Every day they hold buys time. Every ration conserved strengthens their will. Cities under siege are not just targets, they are symbols. A fortress city represents power, legitimacy, and pride. In Ukraine, Mariupol, Bakhmut, Kherson, and Kyiv were not randomly chosen. Each has strategic importance: ports, rail hubs, military infrastructure, or political significance. Capturing them would not only be a tactical victory, but a psychological blow. Every street, every building, every bridge becomes a pawn in a deadly chess game where human lives are the cost of every move. But a siege is not simply an exercise in attrition. The defender's strategy matters just as much as the attacker's plan. Stockpiling food, digging trenches, fortifying key structures, and rotating troops all contribute to survival. Civilians, often untrained, become part of the resistance. Nurses, couriers, and builders are as crucial as soldiers. The siege transforms ordinary citizens into participants in a prolonged, high-stakes contest of endurance. And endurance is often more decisive than tactics, because history shows that a determined population can outlast the strongest army. The attacker faces their own limitations. Logistics become fragile, supply lines stretch and snap. Morale falters when soldiers see the city refuse to yield. Mistakes compound, and desperation grows. Yet human nature drives both sides to act predictably. Defenders cling to hope, attackers to impatience. In Ukraine, Russia's siege strategy mirrors the lessons of centuries past. They encircle, bombard, and wait, expecting the defenders to collapse. The question is not whether the cities can withstand weapons, but whether the human spirit can endure isolation, hunger, and fear. Every siege follows a formula, a rhythm written by experience. Encircle, isolate, pressure, and watch for cracks. But the formula only works if both sides obey the rules of human behavior. History has proven that attackers often miscalculate resolve, and defenders can transform despair into strategy. In Ukraine, this formula is unfolding in real time as modern technology meets ancient tactics. Satellite imagery tracks movements, drones monitor fortifications, and artillery adapts with precision. Yet the essence of siege warfare remains unchanged. It is a battle of endurance, a war fought not just with weapons, but with time, resilience, and the unyielding will to survive. Chapter 2. Leningrad. 872 days, 1941 to 1944. The Siege of Leningrad began on September 8, 1941, and it would last 872 days, an ordeal that tested human endurance to unimaginable limits. Nazi Germany surrounded the city, cutting off all supply routes, trapping over 2 million residents behind the walls. Starvation became the weapon, but not the only one. Constant bombardment, freezing winters, and the psychological terror of uncertainty transformed the city into a crucible of suffering. Yet Leningrad did not fall. The defenders' will proved stronger than any army or artillery shell. Food shortages were catastrophic. Citizens survived on rations that sometimes amounted to a few hundred calories a day. They ate anything they could find: pets, wallpaper paste, anything with some sustenance. Cannibalism, though rare, became a desperate reality for some. But even in the worst moments, Leningrad's population adapted. Farmers and fishermen risked their lives to bring food through frozen lakes. Factories continued to produce weapons, and civilians built barricades and dug trenches, ensuring that every inch of the city could be defended. Morale became the decisive battlefield. Military strategy in Leningrad illustrates the siege formula in brutal detail. German forces encircled the city, believing that hunger and fear would quickly break resistance. They underestimated the defenders' preparation and determination. The Soviets implemented supply corridors, notably across the frozen Lake Ladoga, allowing limited food, weapons, and reinforcements to sustain the population. The city became a fortress of improvisation and resilience. Every citizen, soldier, or civilian became a cog in the machinery of survival. The siege also demonstrates a timeless pattern. The longer the city holds, the more the attacker falters. German forces, overextended and unable to completely cut off supplies, faced mounting casualties and declining morale. Their initial expectation of a swift victory turned into a prolonged struggle against time and human determination. History repeatedly shows that attackers assume endurance will be easier to break than it is. In Leningrad, the city itself became an instrument of resistance, turning deprivation into defiance. For Ukraine, Leningrad is a stark lesson. Mariupol and Bakhmut are modern echoes of the same struggle. Civilians fortify buildings, ration supplies, and adapt creatively to prolonged deprivation. Each day the city survives chips away at the attackers' plans, forcing them to expend resources, time, and patience. Siege warfare remains fundamentally a psychological contest as much as a military one. The defender's ability to endure directly influences the outcome, and history proves that a determined population can outlast even the most disciplined army. Leningrad teaches the principle that willpower often outweighs strategy. Guns and artillery can destroy structures, but they cannot destroy human resilience. Siege warfare is as much about breaking hearts as breaking walls, and those who endure define the battlefield. Modern Ukraine faces the same cruel calculus. Time, endurance, and morale are as critical as tanks, drones, and artillery. Every day the defenders survive, every barricade held, and every ration carefully allocated is another lesson from history. Sieges favor the prepared, the determined, and the unbroken. Chapter 3. Stalingrad. Stalingrad, 1942, became one of the most brutal urban battles in human history. The city, situated on the banks of the Volga River, was strategically vital for both Hitler and Stalin. For the Germans, capturing Stalingrad would sever Soviet supply lines and secure oil fields in the south. For the Soviets, holding the city was not just a matter of logistics, but of morale and symbolic resistance. The battle transformed Stalingrad into a ruinous labyrinth, where streets, factories, and buildings became traps for both attacker and defender. Urban warfare is inherently different from open field combat. Every structure offers cover. Every ruined building can become a fortified position, and every street is a potential death trap. German soldiers, trained for conventional maneuvers, found themselves navigating a city turned into a stone and rubble maze. Soviet defenders, by contrast, used the ruins as an ally. Snipers perched in windows, machine guns concealed in destroyed buildings, and booby traps slowed every advance. The city itself became a weapon, amplifying the defenders' resolve. The lessons of Stalingrad illustrate a timeless pattern of sieges and urban resistance. Attackers often underestimate the difficulty of taking a city, especially when the defenders are determined. The Germans expected a quick victory, relying on superior firepower and training. Instead, they encountered a combination of fortified positions, improvisation, and relentless civilian and soldier participation. The defenders' knowledge of the terrain multiplied their effectiveness, and the longer the battle dragged on, the more the attackers' morale and supply lines deteriorated. For modern Ukraine, Stalingrad is a blueprint in miniature. Bakhmut, Kherson, and other contested cities mirror the same conditions. Defenders convert ordinary buildings into fortresses, civilians assist with logistics, and the city itself slows enemy movement. Prolonged fighting favors those who can endure deprivation, sustain morale, and adapt quickly to changing conditions. Every street held, every barricade erected, and every ambush executed echoes the centuries-old lesson: ruins favor defenders. The human cost of Stalingrad was catastrophic. By the end of the battle, nearly 2 million people were killed, wounded, or captured. Yet the victory for the Soviets reshaped the war. It demonstrated that determination, combined with strategic advantage and knowledge of the terrain, can overcome superior numbers and firepower. The psychological impact was immense. For the attackers, every day spent in the ruins sapped confidence and intensified desperation. For the defenders, each small victory within the city reinforced resilience and unity. Stalingrad also shows the strategic paradox of urban sieges. Destruction is inevitable, but survival is decisive. Cities in ruin may be physically devastated, yet they become bastions of endurance. Modern Ukraine's defenders follow the same logic. Time, adaptation, and morale are more critical than raw firepower. Stalingrad proves that even when a city appears lost, the combination of human determination and strategic defensive measures can alter the course of war. In every brick, rubble, and barricade lies a lesson for those under siege today. Urban combat favors those who refuse to yield. Chapter 4: Sarajevo. Sarajevo, 1992 to 1996, endured the longest siege in modern European history, lasting 1,425 days. Unlike Stalingrad or Mariupol, this siege was shaped not only by military strategy, but also by international politics, urban geography, and the psychological endurance of civilians. The city, a mosaic of cultures, religions, and identities, became both a target and a symbol. Serbian forces encircled Sarajevo, cutting off essential supplies, shelling neighborhoods, and controlling access to water and food. The goal was to break the city's will, to make survival so unbearable that surrender would seem inevitable. Siege warfare in Sarajevo demonstrated that the battle for a city is as much psychological as it is physical. Snipers took positions on hills overlooking the city, targeting anyone who dared venture into the streets. Shelling destroyed homes, schools, and hospitals, creating a climate of constant fear. Yet, despite the relentless pressure, civilians developed systems of survival. Makeshift bakeries, underground water pipelines, and covert supply routes sustained life. Schools continued in basements, and cultural events persisted, asserting humanity amid chaos. The city itself became a testament to resilience. The lessons of Sarajevo extend far beyond its borders. Unlike earlier sieges, international media coverage and diplomatic attention shaped the outcome. The defenders knew that survival depended not only on holding territory, but also on drawing the world's eyes to their plight. Humanitarian corridors, negotiations, and the involvement of the United Nations created a new dimension of siege warfare. Global perception became a tool, and political will became as decisive as bullets or artillery. The siege would eventually end not through complete military conquest, but through diplomacy, sanctions, and international pressure. For modern Ukraine, Sarajevo provides critical insight. While cities like Mariupol and Bakhmut are under attack, the international spotlight adds pressure on the aggressor. Political, economic, and social factors outside the immediate battlefield influence the siege's trajectory. Civilians adapt to prolonged hardships, defenders exploit terrain, and urban infrastructure is repurposed to resist occupation. In both historical and modern examples, sieges reveal a stark reality. Cities rarely fall solely because of firepower. The endurance of people, coupled with strategic adaptation and outside support, often determines the outcome. Sarajevo also highlights the role of symbolism in urban warfare. The city was more than a collection of buildings. It represented a nation, a culture, and the resilience of human spirit. Attackers may control the streets temporarily, but control over will, identity, and narrative is far more elusive. For defenders, every day survived is a victory, and every act of normalcy within the ruins asserts autonomy against overwhelming force. The Siege of Sarajevo underscores a universal pattern. Prolonged encirclement does not guarantee submission. Political, social, and psychological factors interplay with military tactics, creating complexity that cannot be measured in casualties alone. Modern Ukraine, in this context, follows a well-worn template. Each barricade, supply line, and act of resistance mirrors strategies tested over centuries. Cities endure, attackers stall, and history repeats itself in a cycle of human determination against imposed deprivation. The lessons are clear. Persistence, adaptation, and global awareness can turn siege into survival. Chapter 5. Ukraine's Sieges. The pattern repeats. Ukraine's cities under siege are living laboratories of history repeating itself. Mariupol, encircled in 2022, held for 82 days against overwhelming Russian forces. The defenders faced relentless shelling, cut supply lines, and constant bombardment of civilian infrastructure. Yet, their resistance was not random. Tactics developed over centuries of siege warfare were applied with precision. Trenches were dug, checkpoints fortified, civilians organized to maintain essential services, and improvised hospitals treated casualties under extreme conditions. Mariupol's defense showed that morale and organization can delay even the most determined attacker, proving once again that a city's will often matters more than sheer firepower. Bakhmut, a city that became emblematic of Ukraine's enduring fight, illustrates the endurance of defenders under relentless attrition. Russian forces attempted repeated assaults over 224 days, facing urban combat that favored those defending familiar terrain. Streets turned into killing fields for attackers, while defenders leveraged ruins, buildings, and improvised fortifications. Urban sprawl, narrow alleys, and destroyed infrastructure slowed advances and amplified defensive advantage. Historical parallels are unmistakable. Just as Leningrad's citizens survived starvation and bombardment, and Stalingrad's rubble became an ally to the defenders, Bakhmut demonstrated that a city in ruins is not a city defeated. Instead, every block, every barricade, and every sniper nest becomes a multiplier of defensive power. These modern sieges also reveal how strategy has evolved. Ukraine's defenders utilize mobility, communication networks, and international support to offset overwhelming numbers. Drones provide intelligence, satellite imagery guides counterattacks, and global media amplifies both morale and political pressure. Attackers face limits similar to historical sieges: overextended supply lines, fatigue, and the difficulty of conquering a population determined to survive. History teaches that sieges end not when attackers have destroyed a city, but when political will falters. In Mariupol and Bakhmut, the pattern is the same. External support, international attention, and internal cohesion determine endurance. Russia's repeated use of siege tactics reflects both strategic necessity and historical mimicry. Unable to maneuver rapidly or decisively, encirclement and bombardment become the default method of conquest. Yet, history has shown repeatedly that attackers underestimate the psychological resilience of civilians and the tactical advantage of urban defenders. Mariupol fell because outside relief was limited, not because the defenders surrendered. Bakhmut remains a testament to the human will to resist, emphasizing that modern warfare still mirrors the lessons of Leningrad, Stalingrad, and Sarajevo. The broader lesson is unavoidable. Cities matter, morale matters, and history provides a blueprint. Ukraine's experience underscores that sieges are not just military operations. They are tests of endurance, adaptation, and strategic foresight. Attackers may destroy buildings, disrupt logistics, and attempt to crush spirits, but defenders armed with determination, knowledge of terrain, and external support can endure far longer than expected. The war in Ukraine confirms that the principles of siege warfare are remarkably consistent across centuries. Ultimately, history's longest sieges demonstrate that wars are not decided solely on the battlefield. Mariupol, Bakhmut, and other Ukrainian cities remind us that human resilience, strategic ingenuity, and political context shape outcomes more decisively than any single military campaign. The patterns are clear, the lessons are stark, and the implications for the future of warfare are profound. Understanding these sieges allows us to see the war not as chaos, but as a continuation of tactics tested and perfected over 2 millennia.